The Arizona podcast is brought to you by Triumph Protective Coatings. They specialize in concrete polish, epoxy flooring systems, micro top floors and walls, and self leveling underlays. They service all of California, and they are an awesome company. They speak Spanish, and they do amazing work. Check them out at Triumph_coatings on Instagram. And if you use the promo code Arrows Up, you get 10% off. So check them out. Arrows Up Podcast, solo pod today. NFL, I do a thing on free agency. How it's a little bit hyped up. Basketball, Champions League. And that's it. Enjoy the pod. It was a podcast. Tuesday night, we have, well, not so much to get into. I don't want to be over dramatic. But we had an interesting start to the NFL free agency where there was a lot of signings, a lot of money being tossed around from team to team. It almost felt like the NBA free agency, where every few minutes you're getting the notifications where news is breaking here, this guy signing here, this guy signing over there. There's the teams that haven't done anything, like the Cowboys, who legit haven't done anything. And, everyone's gets excited. And I think free agency is one of those moments where in the off season where every team gets excited. And if your team gets a guy, then you're like, oh my God, we got, player X. And if your team loses a player, then you feel like it's the end of the world. And I can't believe we lost that guy. And it's honestly probably in the middle. And football is one of these sports where I think free agency is super, super overrated, especially because the way the contracts are set up in football, where the team has all the leverage, the team has every tool available to them to keep a guy, from tagging them to restructuring and everything else. And in the NFL, if you make it to free agency, it's because a team didn't want you. And that is the truth. It is rare where you see a free agent that is truly like a sought after free agent. Like Patrick Mahomes, for example, would never, ever, ever be a free agent. Unless he were to commit some kind of crime or something like that. But under regular rules, there is no chance that he ever hits free agency. And the only guy that has ever hit free agency is Kirk Cousins. And even Kirk Cousins, he's a special case because everyone likes the idea of Kirk Cousins. But whenever Kirk Cousins actually has to play for your team, everyone gets I guess it's Kirk Cousins. So Kirk Cousins leaving the then Redskins to the Vikings, and now leaving the Vikings to now the Falcons. He's a special case. But even Kirk Cousins isn't like this crazy desired player that everybody wants. Like Justin Jefferson, for example, who's going to get paid next year or this year. He's going to get paid by somebody. And the rumor is that he's turned down a $30 million contract from the Vikings. He's not going to be a free agent. There is no chance. Because if he's on the Vikings next season, he's going to be on the Vikings in next season. And if the Vikings can trade him or they can agree on a deal, guess what? They're just going to franchise tag him. And when they franchise tag him, they have him in contract for yet another year. And then I think you can franchise tag a guy up to 3 years. So he's never going to become a free agent. He would have to leave. He would have to get traded. And that's what you would see. So we have a free agency period where Saquon Barkley signed with the Eagles, and everybody got crazy. And, oh, my God, Saquon Barkley, oh, he went to the Eagles. And that's cool, but that doesn't really move the needle. That doesn't really if you've been watching football the last few seasons, Saquon Barkley hasn't been the guy. Now, the idea of Saquon Barkley is a lot of fun. And I think we've all seen the graphic now of the Eagles' weapons, and I saw somebody on X talking about how their weapons match up with the Niner weapons. And yeah, on paper, sure. But we have to take into account that we've seen the Niner weapons in action over the last few seasons. We can't say that about Saquon Barkley. And the fact that the Giants made no push to keep him, they did nothing to retain him, nothing to even get him to stay. This is one of those times where we have to pay attention to what the team is telling us, because sometimes we ignore that. Sometimes we forget that these teams are communicating to us without communicating to us. I'll give you an example. There was, when Jimmy Garoppolo was the 49er quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, if you remember, took the Niners to the Super Bowl, took the Niners to an NFC Championship game. And every single year, there was this idea of, are the Niners going to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo? And everybody, and there was a contingent of people who were like, yeah, they have to, because, Jimmy Garoppolo is the weak link. And then there was another group that was saying, well, no, you don't have to, because, he wins. And you can say whatever you want about Jimmy Garoppolo. He's winning, and that's all that matters. He wins. And from one standpoint, yeah, you want a guy that wins. You want a guy that is giving you giving you the option to win. But we also have to take into account this. The 49ers were telling us exactly what they thought of Jimmy Garoppolo every year when they kept trying to replace him. And when the Niners traded all the picks to get Trey Lance in the draft, they told us right then and there what they thought of Jimmy Garoppolo. Without Kyle Shanahan ever actually coming out and saying Jimmy Garoppolo's not good enough, the 49ers' actions told us everything we needed to know. And when it comes to free agency in football, we have to take it like that. These teams are telling us what they think. These teams that have these guys in their building are telling us exactly what they think of the guys that are hitting free agency. So I'm not going to do a hype thing on free agency. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say, oh, man, this guy with that guy. Oh, man, can you believe this guy's here, this guy's there? Because it's, we got to be sober about these things. And no free agent signing has really moved the needle all that much. Because when it's time to talk about football and what's actually going to happen on the field, we're not going to think that the Bears all of a sudden have a big chance of winning the division because they got Jonathan Owens, even though Jonathan Owens is a really good player, right? Um, we're not going to think that the Bucks are back because they kept Levante David. We're not going to think that. We're not going to think that the Dolphins all of a sudden have a chance to get out of the wild card because they got Raekwon Davis from the Colts. We're not going to think that the Texans are going to beat the Chiefs all of a sudden because they got Daniel Hunter. We're not going to think that. Jordan Poyer going to the Dolphins isn't moving the needle for anybody. Willie Gay leaving the Chiefs isn't leaving us like, oh man, are the Chiefs going to miss Willie Gay and have the Saints found the guy they needed? We're not going to think that. Josh Jacobs signing with the Packers doesn't automatically make us think that they're going to win the division. Because if you think the Packers are going to win the division, you thought it after what they did in the playoffs. And even though the Chiefs have yet to do anything splashy, guess what? They're going to go into next season as probably the favorites because they got Patrick Mahomes. Derrick Henry going to the Ravens doesn't make us forget that Lamar Jackson is the James Harden of football. So free agency is a lot of fun to talk about. And it's a lot of fun to get hyped up and excited about the guys who are in new places and what are they going to do and can they do this and can do that. But we got to remember, in football, it is rare when a free agent signing is actually a huge, huge deal. Because the guys that actually make it to free agency, for the most part, and there's exceptions, and I'm not arguing exceptions because you can't argue exceptions, for the most part, end up not being that big of a deal. So, this is some basketball. In the NBA, we've had OG, let's start with the Knicks. OG Anunoby came back today, and he's a big reason why I like the Knicks, because he makes them scary. He makes them a nightmare defensively. And he came back today. He had 14 points, 2 of 5 from 3, 6 of 11 from the field. But defensively, he is just a big disruptor. And him coming back, and Brunson, he was back sometime last week. This gives the Knicks just that extra push as we wind down the season, and we're getting to the middle of March, and we got less than a month. We have like a month left to go in the NBA season, and so the Knicks find themselves as Tuesday ends, they find themselves in the 4th seed. Now, I don't know if they'll be able to catch Cleveland, and I think they'll stay 4th, and they might be able to hold off Orlando and Indiana, who are just right there for the 4th spot. But they beat the Sixers, and the Sixers are just not in good shape, and they're probably going to end up in the play-in game if they can't catch Indiana or Orlando. And one of the things that we've seen with Philly is that they just don't have any other guy besides Maxey. And the rest of their players have turned out to be guys that are more guys that provide, say, role player roles. There's no guy here that can elevate and be a real guy or a pseudo guy when the main guy is not there. And besides Mac, and when you're trying to make a push for the playoffs, you need that. For example, the Lakers. The Lakers, if LeBron goes down, D'Angelo Russell can be a pseudo guy, and he can be if you have to have D'Angelo Russell be the main scorer for 2 weeks. D'Angelo Russell can do that. It's not ideal. You don't want that. You're not going to win a championship with that. But you're going to stay afloat, and you might get to 500. And Reeves can do that too. And when you look at Philly, Philly just doesn't have that. You're not going to ask Mo Bamba to do that. You're not going to ask Nicholas Batum to do that. You're not going to ask Robert Covington to do that. You're not going to ask Kelly Oubre, who's been pretty decent for them. And that is why they've fallen off a cliff, even though they have a really good team or a really good coach. And Maxi's a really good player, all-star player. But whenever you don't have any other guy that can become a pseudo guy, then you're gonna keep falling in the standings. Now Miami, they're the 8th seed, but Miami's probably the scariest team in the entire East, because Miami is the one team, even though they're the 8th seed, even though they don't care about the regular season, even though they might play in the play-in, they are the team that, like we saw it last year, can make it all the way to the finals, because Jimmy Butler becomes a different guy, because Hawkins is a real player for them, because they have the best coach in basketball, because Bam Adebayo is still a really good player. And that roster is so much deeper than it was last year. They are better offensively. They are better defensively. The Terry Rozier trade just did wonders for them, because it just allowed them to have another creator, another shooter on that team. And the Heat find themselves in the 8th seed, but they find themselves in the 8th seed because they just don't care about the regular season. They've punted on the regular season. Jimmy Butler has missed like over 20 games, and there hasn't been like a serious injury. It's not like he, messed up his knee, or it's just been just resting pretty much, because they don't care about the regular season. And if you're Boston, if you're Milwaukee, you find yourself looking for ways to keep advancing. And can you imagine, you're the Celtics, and in the first round, you get the number 8 seed Miami Heat in the first round. Just like, what a nightmare that would be. Or if you're the Bucks, and Miami gets the 7th seed, and that's your prize. You work so hard to get into the number 1 seed, number 2 seed. You fired your coach mid-season. You brought in Doc Rivers, and your grand prize, the Miami Heat. And this is why some people have suggested the idea that if you're the top 4 seeds, you get to pick who you want. So you kind of do, you keep the playing game, but after that, the first 4 seeds say, I want to play this team. So for example, in the East, Boston would probably say the winner, the top 8 would be, say it's 5 through 8 would be Orlando, Indiana, Philly, Miami. Say those are the teams. Boston would say, you know what? We want to play the Pacers. That's what we want in the first round. Pacers don't play defense. They can't stay with us. Give us the Pacers. Milwaukee would then probably say, give us Orlando. They're young, inexperienced. Give us that team. And in Cleveland would probably pick Philly, because they could match up well with them. And then the Knicks would have to play Miami. Now that would be interesting, and obviously that would cause for a lot of like bulletin board stuff. Oh, you wanted to play me, or a lot of that stuff we would see on X, the SpongeBob meme where he's just like leaning in type of thing. If you were to see an upset, I don't know if I like that idea, But I also don't know. I also for sure know that I don't like if you've worked so hard to get the number one seed, you've cared about the regular season, you've played your guys, you've played it well, and your reward is the toughest matchup in the entire playoffs in the first round. Doesn't seem fair. At the very least, you would think that that they should reward getting the first four seeds, making it something like, you know what, if you get the first four seeds, it's a 7-game series, so you get 6 games at home. And that seems very drastic, but it should mean something. It should be really, really hard to upset the top seeds because they got there. And they did everything right in the regular season to get there. In the West, you got something similar. Because can you imagine? So Minnesota is half a game. So in the West, you get OKC, Denver, and Minnesota, all like in there for the first seed. And can you imagine you're Minnesota, you get the number one seed, and the Lakers get the 8th seed, and that's your prize? You get to play the Lakers, or you're OKC, and you get the number one seed, and you've had such a great season, and your prize is the Lakers, who are bigger than you, who have more veterans, who, if it comes down to who's going to get a whistle, you think Shea's going to get a better whistle than LeBron James or Anthony Davis. It just, and we saw it last year with Memphis versus the Lakers. It was just a bad matchup for Memphis. And again, I don't know if the answer is you let the teams pick who they want to play. That would be a lot of fun. It would be super dramatic. ESPN could do an entire 1-hour show on that. And it would be fun. Don't get me wrong. But there needs to be a way where the NBA rewards the teams that do well in the regular season. They have to. And baseball has a very similar thing where now baseball is, it's a little different because it does seem like the wildcard teams do get just an extra advantage just because they play so much. And by the time their matchup starts versus the team that got the bye, it just seems a little lopsided because you're coming in with momentum. Now, I don't think that's an excuse, and I'm looking at the Dodgers. That's not an excuse for you to lose to the Diamondbacks. But maybe if out of the 5 games, 4 of them are at Dodger Stadium as opposed to 2, I mean, maybe that helps. I don't know. But in basketball, for sure, it's funny as a non-Celtics fan to think of the idea that Miami would play the Celtics in the first round, because that's been the Achilles heel for the Celtics and for the Bucks. And the NBA, who has a regular season problem where these guys don't care about the regular season, should do something to incentivize these guys playing, because a 65-game rule. So the NBA has a 65-game minimum rule where if you don't play at least 65 games, you can't qualify for any of the awards. Now, the awards are important because that's where these guys get bigger money and all that. And so someone, for example, like Donovan Mitchell for the Cavs, who's had a great year, who's been the reason why the Cavaliers are the 3rd seed in the East, he's missed, I think yesterday, he'd missed the game, and that was the cutoff. He's going to play less than 65 games. And he's not eligible for any award. No All-NBA team, no nothing. And that sucks. I like that rule because it incentivizes guys playing. And when it comes to the playoffs, there should be something like that too, to incentivize or to reward, I should say, reward the teams that are making the push and reward the teams that are trying day in and day out and that are winning. Maybe I shouldn't say trying, but are winning, because that's ultimately why people don't tune into the NBA October through March. And they tune in April and say, oh, I didn't really have to see everything. I kind of know what's going on. And sadly, 75% of them are, they're not wrong 75% of the time. It's the rare occasion like last year, Denver, where I think for the very first time, Jokic was introduced to the world in the finals, or in the Western Conference Finals when they played the Lakers, and people were like, "Man, this Jokic guy, pretty good, huh?" And everyone that's watches basketball on the daily are like, yeah, he's pretty good." And that happens rarely. I think that could happen with Shea in OKC this year if he plays like the Lakers or Golden State or a team like that. It happened with Luka in the bubble season where during the pandemic where everybody was home and all you really could do was watch, and that's when Luka just went crazy on the Clippers. So there's moments like that, but by and large, most people don't have to watch the regular season to know what's going on in the NBA, and that's not a good thing for the NBA. And so, yeah, something has to be done. Now, in terms of where we're at a month out, nothing much has changed from what we talked about last week with Gehrig in terms of seeding, how I feel about the teams. I think Jokic is going to win MVP because that guy has been the game he had, the third quarter he had against the Raptors last week was just ridiculous. He was just killing them and controlling the pace. He did it to the Lakers. He did it to the Celtics. And the Raptors were his latest victim. And he is the best offensive weapon I've seen in my entire life. In my short life, he's the best offensive weapon. Not because he's the best scorer or the best passer. I'm not saying that. Just as a weapon and what he is able to do for everybody else and how everybody else is able to succeed with him. And everybody else is able to have the best moments with him. And he's so rare with that because, most guys that are great offensively, it's because it benefits them. Like Kobe Bryant was a great offensive weapon, but for himself, he was a great scorer. And he could pass, but, he was a great offensive player for him. LeBron James, great offensive weapon. But by and large for himself, and if you want to succeed with LeBron, you got to adjust to him. And you get someone like Kevin Durant, the same. Steph Curry, the same. But Jokic is the first guy that I can think of since maybe Steve Nash that he is a great offensive weapon regardless of who's on his team, regardless of how you're defending him. And his guys don't have to adjust to him. His game is so flexible that it just adjusts to anybody. That you can put anybody with him and they'll just be successful. And that's like next level when it comes to just what you can do offensively as a player. And it's why I say that he's the best offensive weapon I've ever seen in my life. And it's why the Nuggets are, in my opinion, going to win the title again. Because they have him and nobody else has him. And it's as easy as that. And the Lakers, for example, last year played them close, and even this year they've played them close. And you think like, oh man, if this happens or this, this other thing would have happened, then we beat them. And I think if they were to play the Celtics, that's how it would go. And you would see Celtics fans, like the Laker fans were last year, oh man, if that shot goes in or if that doesn't happen, we would have beat you. But the truth is, it's not that close. It's just moments. But the truth is, they have Jokic and nobody else does, and that's a gulf to get by. And it's just the reality of it. I've seen it as a 49er fan, going up against Mahomes twice. And I can say if Greenlaw didn't get hurt, or if Garoppolo would have completed that pass, or if they didn't call that pass interference on Kittle, or if they would have called, one of a million holding calls on Bosa, we win 2 Super Bowls or 1 Super Bowl or whatever. But the reality is the Chiefs had Mahomes or have Mahomes, and we don't. And if the Chiefs didn't have Mahomes, I'd be a really, really happy 49er fan right now and not a bitter one. And that's the reality of it. And we can try to reduce it to little moments, and we could try to say it's closer than it is. But there is a gulf between those the team that has Mahomes and the team that doesn't. And we saw it all those years with Brady. We saw it in the NBA all those years with who had LeBron and who didn't, and that was the reason why you made the finals. We saw it with Jordan. We saw it with Magic and Bird. It just happens. And sometimes the series are close. Sometimes there's close games, and you can think we were right there. But the truth is they had the guy and you didn't. And right now the guy is in Denver. His name is Jokic, and nobody else has him. And that is why Denver is favorite to win it all. Champions League. 2 games, 2 really good games today. Porto versus Arsenal. And went all the way to penalties. Penalties, the most pressure, I think, for an athlete, just like, a moment, the most pressurized moment for an athlete. Just because it's one-on-one, nobody else, that's it. It's just, there's no other outside variable. Like in football, the field goal, and it's like a game-winning field goal. The guys on the other side can make a great play, and that can be a reason why you don't win, They can block it. The blockers cannot do a great job, or the snap can be bad. So there's, other things that can happen that can kind of dictate the kicker from not getting all the blame. But in penalties, if the kicker blocks it, if the goalkeeper blocks it, it's the goalkeeper, nobody else. That's it. And if the striker makes it, it's all the glory for the striker. And unfortunately for Porto, man, sometimes you watch enough of these, and you look at the players' body language, you look at how they're moving, how they're looking at the ball, and you're like, oh man, you're going to miss. And 2 of the guys for Porto, just looking at them, you're like, you're going to miss this. Even the last one for Porto, the guy ran his windup was so long. And as soon as I saw him step all back, I'm like, this game's over. He's going to miss. And he did. Arsenal made theirs. Arsenal was clinical. Arsenal was, cold with their penalty. So they advance. They keep moving. Xavi and Barcelona, they responded well. Napoli had them on the ropes. Napoli let them off the hook. And the old saying, el que perdona pierde, is so true in football. And it happened today as they were forgiven 2 goals, and Barcelona won by 2. And that's what happened. It's as simple as that. Xavi said after the game that he's not coming back. Don't ask him. And if you keep asking him, he's going to tell you the same thing. He's not returning no matter what. And as a Real Madrid fan, it makes me sad because I want Xavi to stay forever in Barcelona. And but it is what it is. And that's it. That's it for me. I'll talk to you on Thursday. And I'll see you then. Enjoy the Champions League tomorrow. We have 2 more games, and I'll do an Instagram thing for that, as opposed to like an entire pod. And in terms of the NBA, we have a little bit less than a month. I won't do any college basketball stuff because I don't watch college basketball. I know that March Madness is approaching, and but I won't do any of that because again, I don't watch that. So, but enjoy that. Those who do watch it, and I will talk to you soon. That's the pod. We are brought to you by, as always, Triumph Protective Coatings. They specialize in concrete polish, epoxy flooring systems, micro top floors and walls, and self-leveling underlays. They service California, and they speak Spanish. You can follow them, Triumph_coatings on Instagram, and you get a 10% off if you use the promo code ARROWSUP. You can also reach them on Gmail, triumphprotectivecoatings@gmail.com. That's the pod. Thank you to Angel for the music. Thank you to you for listening. You can listen to Arizona Podcast anywhere you get pods, so please rate and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Arrows Up, and I will talk to you on Thursday. I have a pod coming up with David. So, a lot of fun stuff coming up. I'll talk to you then. Let's go Lakers.